Time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
So folks, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, that I may be reasonably happy in this life. Fabulous quote from the Serenity Prayer. Now what does that have to do with this show? Well, folks, today we're going to go to a journey of a gentleman who is well loved and liked in our area in northeastern Pennsylvania. His name was Donny Watson, and he passed on from pancreatic cancer. Today we have his wife on the show, Louise Watson. She wrote a book called Donny's Plea, Thoughts of a Cancer Patient. Interesting story, folks, and why would a person write a book after such a hardship? Well, Louise, thanks for coming on the Sam Lesante Show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, you're no stranger to appearing on the Sam Lesante Show because you told me you sang a song on my talent show, right?
I did many years ago.
Yeah, we were taping up at WVIA at the time. Remember that?
Yep.
Was, yeah.
I do remember that.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because we would do, like, Sam and I, and my son would go up there and we would start at 7 o'clock in the morning and tape, like, we got 8 or 9 shows in one day. So it was an interesting thing. We had a lot of fun. So you sang. You still sing?
I do.
Yeah.
I actually have a CD of my own too.
Is that right? What's
I
it
do.
called?
Simply Me.
What?
Simply Me.
Simply Me. So I don't recall the specific, the song or the time, but I mean, I have past shows. I think I have to start playing them so people know we had a lot of talent. We still have a lot of talent in northeastern Pennsylvania. Now let's get to your book here, which is an interesting. You sent me a letter and you said, you'd like to discuss this book, and it's Donny's Plea, Thoughts of a Cancer Patient. So tell me first of all a little bit about yourself and how you met Donny, and take us through this story.
Well, Donny and I met back in 1997. Well, we met actually in 96, but we didn't start going out until 97. I was actually singing in a band at Still Creek Tavern in Tamaqua, and he walked in. I used to use a headset, so he didn't even see me. He just heard my voice, and he couldn't figure out where the voice was coming from. And pretty much, I guess it was love at first hearing somebody. I don't know. Yeah. But then after he saw me, we started to talk, and I used to dance with some of the people that were there. And every time I would go back, I would dance with him. And we started going out in March of 97. And pretty much we were inseparable since then.
So you're dating and you're getting married. Okay. So what happens now when you're married? Because the book, in fact, there's a picture of you dancing with Donny in here.
Right.
With the headset on.
Shows.
Yeah. So what happens? You're married. Things are doing fine. You're going on cruises. What's going on?
Well, we like to go on cruises. He worked at Regency Thermographers at the time. We lived in Hazleton, and didn't really want to stay in Hazleton anymore. We wanted a little bit more quieter area, so we moved down to the Cunningham area, where I actually live now, and we were there since 2003. We've been there, and we bought the house and fixed it up as much as we possibly could, and that's pretty much where we were planning on staying. And then.
So what kind of guy was Donny?
Donny was very quiet, very laid back, very loving, very caring. He was one of the best people anybody would ever want to meet. And everybody who was in his life is a better person for knowing him.
All right, so what happened then? What happened to Donny?
When he started getting the symptoms, his stools became very light, and he started to itch all over the place. Like his entire body started to itch, and we couldn't figure out why. And that was going on for about 2 weeks or so. Finally, on June 13, 2010, he went to the hospital, and they admitted him. They didn't know for sure, so they admitted him for further testing, and thought that it was a blocked bile duct. And he went for surgery. They put in a stent in his bile duct to open it up a little bit, because the bile was backing up, and that's what was causing the itching. And he had that in for a couple weeks, but it didn't seem like it was working. So he went back in, they opened him back up and put a different kind of stent in. They thought maybe it was the wrong kind of stent, and that one still didn't work. So further testing, they found out that it was cancer. At first, they thought it was bile duct cancer coming from the bile duct. And they said it was treatable, and it shouldn't really be that awful bad after treatments. But then after further testing and biopsies and scans and everything, they found out that it was actually pancreatic cancer. So it wasn't coming from the bile duct, it was actually coming from the pancreas. So it was coming from the pancreas into the bile duct. And that's when we found out that it was actually pancreatic cancer. So we started to see a number of surgeons in the area and to see what our options and everything were. And they said he could have a Whipple surgery, which would take several hours. But after a few more weeks, when he had to go right before his surgery in August, he had to go for further testing just to make sure that he was all right to have the surgery. And upon further testing, they supposedly found another tumor on his liver, and they wouldn't do the surgery. They had to start chemo and radiation. So he had to go in and have a Metaport put in, so he can start receiving the chemotherapy. So that's what he did, and he did that for several months. Then we went back to the doctor, to the surgeon in the area, and figured he'd be able to have the surgery, only to find out that he wouldn't do it, and we didn't understand why. So we decided to go out of the area. And what was supposedly tumors on his liver turned out not to be tumors on his liver. So he probably could have had the surgery back in August when we thought that he was supposed to be able to. And then when we went out of state, we got all these tests and everything done. We stayed there for several days for them to do testing. We came back and showed them to the original doctor. And we said, there's nothing on here. There's the biopsy and everything done, and several other tests were done. There's nothing cancerous, so why can't he have the surgery? And this doctor still wouldn't do it. So we went to another state and stayed there for several days, and they actually said, you're a great candidate to have the Whipple surgery done. And they said we found it in time, but apparently it didn't work.
He went through the surgery.
He went through the surgery.
And what happened after the surgery?
And after the surgery, he had to have chemo and radiation for a while longer, which he did. And everything was, we thought was going okay. He ended up in the hospital a couple times because of low hemoglobin and things like that. But everything was going okay. Thought that he was going to be able to go back to work. He actually worked a lot, even through his radiation and his chemo, which people were really surprised at how strong and how well he was taking it. And he ended up with a hernia. So couldn't go back to work, had to have hernia surgery. Turns out the hernia came from because he had surgery in his stomach area. So he had to have a hernia surgery. So everything was going okay, and he thought he was going back to work at the beginning of January 2012. And he felt a lump in his leg, like around in December. He felt a lump in his leg and couldn't figure out what it was. So going to the doctor again, they found out that the pancreatic cancer cells had gone through his blood system. And actually that's where it ended up there.
What's going on now in your mind, okay, and what are you seeing? Because here again, you have Donny's plea, thoughts of a cancer patient, okay?
Right.
What was going on in your mind and what was going on in Donny's mind, okay? And we come back, folks, I'm talking to Louise Watson. The book is called Donny's Plea, Thoughts of a Cancer Patient. You can get the book at Amazon.com or go on Facebook, which is Donny's Plea on Facebook. And the interesting thing about the book is it takes you through a journey here. And we come back, we'll talk about what's going on in their minds and what happens, and then what's the purpose of the book. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Remember, 24/7, you can watch all of our shows, every one that we produce here at ssptv.com, ssptv.com, and my email is sam@ssptv.com. Folks, I'm talking to Louise Watson, and her husband passed away from pancreatic cancer, and the book is called Donny's Plea, Thoughts of a Cancer Patient. Okay, so now, excuse me, he found a lump on his leg from the cells from the pancreatic cancer. And so what happens now?
Well, he started chemo and radiation again. And our thoughts were, well, if he had chemo and radiation and everything before, we didn't think that the cancer, as long as he was having it, we didn't think the cancer would be able to come back. So after he found the lump in his leg, he started chemo and radiation. And it was 7 hours each week for him to have the chemo. It was really extensive radiation or chemotherapy. Mm-hmm. And he had a stroke, like the first time he had this 7-hour chemotherapy session. And he was rushed to the hospital, but by the time he got to the hospital, he seemed to be doing okay, so they classified it not as a stroke. Mm-hmm. So he went through, this really beat him down. This radiation and chemo really beat him down.
As you're going through this, I mean, there's a lot of people who could relate to, things that happen in their families or their husbands or spouses or children or grandparents or whatever. And each one of them, they go through different things in their life, as to what happens to them, and how do you cope with this, okay? I don't know if I ever met your husband, but from what I understand and from people who I've spoken to, knowing that you were coming on the show, just could not stop telling me what kind of great person he was. In fact, one of the people were telling me she was actually crying, how much he affected her life, And so now, Donny's Plea, Thoughts of a Cancer Patient, what then begins to happen that you want to get this out? What is it that this book is supposed to mean, Louise?
It means Donny's Plea, Thoughts of a Cancer Patient are Donny's thoughts that he gave to his brother. His brother actually wrote a paper, Donny's Plea, Thoughts of a Cancer Patient, because that's what Donny wanted. And he wanted it to get out to people so that he could possibly try to help them to not go through the same things that we went through, the same confusions that we went through. He always thought that each doctor that was involved and each radiologist or whoever was involved in the case should have talked to each other and been on the same page instead of one person saying one thing, another person saying another thing. Because we got all mixed up.
How many years ago was that?
This was 2010 into 2012,
okay,
until he passed.
Since then, with from because I have a lot of doctors come on my show here. Since then, there have the new computer systems that are in all the doctors' offices. So that's perfect what you're saying, because they all know what's going on through the, when a patient comes in, they have all of the records from every doctor that they've gone to. Okay. And that is, and I know exactly what you're saying. Maybe at the time, I don't think they had it, because I think within the last year, I'm under the impression that the systems are, they know everything. When you go for blood work, I go to my doctor and I get my blood work once a year. I'm physical. Every other doctor that if I go to knows what I have. So that's important. So his thoughts were, okay, at the time. Now, keeping a journal, you said from the beginning.
From the very beginning.
And
I did.
Yeah, and what was
actually. That was From the very beginning, I wrote down everything the doctor told us, what they thought it was, what the treatment should be, where we should go, his medications, how many times a week he needed to take his medications, how many times a week he had to go to radiation, chemotherapy, everything that pertained to his treatment. I wrote it down in this book.
Now, when you're looking at support groups, no matter anyone who gets sick, God forbid if they get a cancer, I think it's very important that they have their family and support groups. I know a friend of mine who, is beating a cancer, and it boils down to the fact that he has so many good friends, and his family are there supporting them all the time, giving him that urge to fight, okay? Would Donny have that, in his thoughts? Did he have that support?
He did, from family, friends, and from the hospice care workers. The hospice care workers we had were absolutely amazing. I'm still friends with them now. I'm still friends with them today.
Louise, what would you have done different, after, Donny went through this discovering of the pancreatic cancer and then the lump in his leg, etc.? What would you have done different?
I would have tried to get the doctors, all the doctors that were involved from all the different states, to try to come to an agreement and decide, which was the best recourse to take. I mean, like he says in the book, or like I said in the book, it may not have changed anything with his outcome, but it may have. It could have, if things had been done differently. Had he had the surgery first, instead of doing the chemo, instead of waiting to do the chemo and the radiation, if he had had the surgery first, would it have changed anything?
We mentioned about friends, we mentioned about, family and being supportive. How important is faith, your faith in this situation?
Faith is always important. You have to have faith, even though it might not turn out to be the way you really wanted it to be, but you have to have faith.
Because I saw a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, and he was diagnosed with cancer, and he's coming along, and he says, Sammy, I'm so surprised how many people are praying for me, and he says, and it really helps, which I think is critical. No matter what faith you have, at least, it was in the prayers. Describe Donny to me. I mean, if someone asked you, Louise, what kind of guy was Donny Watson?
He was just a beautiful man inside and out.
He was a giver,
loving.
wasn't he?
He was a very good, he was a giver. He gave, he was more worried about me than he was himself.
Yeah.
He wanted me taken care of. At the time, we were having our back deck done, and he kept asking his brother, this needs to be done. He says, is this done yet? I want Louise to be taken care of.
He knew he was dying.
He knew he was.
What was his attitude?
His attitude was fantastic. He was, like I said, he was very laid back, and he would take on anything. And if this is what it was, then this is what it was. And he wasn't like other people who say, "I'm going to beat this. I'm going to fight this." He fought it.
Yeah.
But he wasn't saying, "I'm going to beat this. I'm going to beat this. I'm going to beat this," like other people do. He just figured if this was it, this was it.
Well, some people go through different things different ways. If you have the determination, I'm going to beat it. It gives you the strong your attitude. But it seemed that Donny, from what I could understand, was a giver. Okay.
He was.
And what would you think he would want our viewers to know?
He would want them to not give up. He would want them to look into every possible situation that they can look into to try to save them and to help themselves and to help their families.
And most of this is mentioned in the book.
It is.
Folks, I'm talking to Louise Watson. She wrote a book, Donny's Plea, Thoughts of a Cancer Patient. That was her husband who passed away from pancreatic cancer. And he also served our nation for 15 years, you said? And from what I understand, he was a fabulous person. We'll be back after this. Thanks for staying with us, folks. You're watching the Sam Lesante Show. And once again, thank you so much for your great support. Remember, you can watch all of our shows, this one on our internet website, ssptv.com. My email is sam at ssptv.com. I'm speaking to Louise Watson, who wrote a book about her husband. It's Donny's Plea, Thoughts of a Cancer Patient. So we went through the different things and what he was. He was a fighter. And in here, in the book, you also have different options that people should do, and not necessarily connected to cancer, to pancreatic cancer, but you have a number of things of arthritis, foundation, you have the American Cancer Society, you have Alzheimer's disease. Now, you have an array of different things in here with people, celiac disease, Crohn's disease, and you have a list of what they could do, where they should go. Why do you put all of these different diseases, diseases in the book?
To help others with not just cancer, but to let them know that there are other places to go for all different kind of diseases, terminal illnesses, chronic illnesses. The woman who wrote the book with me, Deborah Lonergan, she actually always wanted to write a patient advocacy book.
This is like a research book.
And that's what it is.
It's fabulous.
It
I
is.
mean,
And that's what we
just to
wanted.
get the book for, because sometimes people, they're in a panic the way it is, okay, when they hear stuff. But however, you have cardiac disease here. Everything.
Everything in there, places to go.
Right.
So you don't have to do the research yourself. Just
Yeah.
go in there and look and say, oh, well, this is where I might be able to go to get some help.
I find this to be extremely, extremely informative. You have the Coalition of the Cancer Cooperation Groups, National Comprehensive Cancer Network. There's just an array of things, Alzheimer's disease, where people could just go and get general information. And it's great to have this information, because this way, the more informed you are, the better off it is.
Right.
Okay. The book, Donny's Plea, Thoughts of a Cancer Patient. How was it, towards the end, when he knew his time was up?
It was hard, especially for his family, me. You have to be able to ask for help. I wasn't able to at first, and I took care of him up to the point till I got hospice in 2 days before. Mm-hmm. I did it all except for the help of his sisters. His sisters came and helped.
You talk about caregivers.
Right.
God bless them.
Yes,
God bless any
most
caregiver,
definitely.
because I'll tell you,
Most
these workers at these nursing homes, they have to be dedicated. Certainly
They are.
not the money. I'm on the board of Hospice of the Sacred Heart, and when we go to our board meetings, we see a tremendous amount of people that we have serviced. We're glad we're the #1 in northeastern Pennsylvania. The Hospice of Sacred Heart, they have. I'm sure all the hospices do, but being involved and seeing the stories of families' life, you don't know what it is until you go through it.
No,
People
you don't.
I can understand, but when you go through it, it's a different story.
You can try to tell people, but they don't really understand until a loved one goes through it.
You're a young person, and I'm sure, and he passed, you said 2010.
2012 he
2012,
passed.
two
Yeah. August.
years. Yeah. Right now, for those people who are going through struggles in their lives, okay, medication could only do certain things. What do you tell these people who are going through maybe similar things that you went through?
To get help, ask. You need time for yourself. You need to take care of yourself. You're taking care of your loved one also. Ask for help when you need a little downtime to get away, just to free yourself, just for a couple minutes. Ask for your family, your friends, the hospice nurses. His chemotherapy nurses were absolutely wonderful. We absolutely loved them. And his doctor, we loved his doctor.
They say death is a celebration, okay? It's a celebration where they go on to, to see their maker and they're happy. And we all believe, I believe in that. What makes you happy, Louise?
What makes me happy now?
Yeah.
That I knew Donny, and that I was his wife for 12 years, and that I knew him for 15 years. And it makes me happy that I'm keeping my promise to him and getting his word out to him, or getting his word out for him, because that was one of his last wishes. And that's what I plan on doing, and that's why I wanted to come on the show.
Well, in the book, you take us through the journey, okay? The good times, the sad times, and then, of course, this information. The book is jam-packed with information, but just the story itself, because people sometimes, it's like when my wife and I are watching a Hallmark movie or a Lifetime movie, or the stories you get so much from them, and they relate to different things. Well, I want to thank you for writing me and asking me to come, coming on the show to talk about your book, and I'm sure Donnie's very happy today. And you got some great memories that you're going to be able to share, And whatever you do, in your endeavors, I wish you the best, And I'm sure his brothers and his family, his sisters or whatever. How many children was in the family?
Great. 6 brothers and sisters.
Wow.
Yeah.
God bless. He came from a big family, right?
Utah, Michigan, here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Well, I wish you the best, Louise, okay?
Thank you very much.
Her name is Louise Watson, folks. She's my guest, and she wrote, along with Deborah Lonergan. How do you say her last name? Lonergan.
Yeah.
Donny's Plea, Thoughts of a Cancer Patient. You get this Amazon.com, or go to the Facebook, Donny's Plea, on Facebook. And you said there's other places they could buy the book in?
Barnes & Noble.
Barnes & Noble.
You can go and order it.
And
the Inspirations Bookstore in Golds,
okay.
down in Drums, or
Right.
Cunningham,
Yeah.
and Halo Hair Studio.
So
She
they
has
have
a
the
couple
book.
there. Yeah.
Good. Okay, folks, it's called, again, Donny's Plea, Thoughts of a Cancer Patient. Beautiful book, but also a research book of all the different diseases that you can imagine, and information, where to go and get information from it. We'll see you next time.